Well, first of all, the more you get into Bitcoin, the more it's like, for me personally speaking, that's all I really want to work on. And I become less interested in spending time that like props up the old system. And to some degree, like you just have to just get over that fact. You need to use tools in other areas, whether that be USDT or some kind of, shitcoin exchange. Like, just that's okay. It is what it is. It's a means to an end. But this trading system, can you use it on other assets to Bitcoin, or have you built it very specifically to Bitcoin?
Yeah, so we can actually use it on any asset. It actually can trade any digital currency. Wow. So the reality is you don't really want to, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoin has specific characteristics that all the other digital currencies don't, right? We're working with...
which are?
Which are. So firstly, we're working very closely with Giovanni Santastasi, who basically discovered the power law theory behind Bitcoin's growth, which basically means that Bitcoin is growing via a power law trend. Now, a power law is a very, very unique characteristic that is not typical of a financial asset. It's more typical of, for example, the growth rate of a city. The growth rate of a city like New York or Tokyo follows a power law. Now, why would this happen to a financial asset? Well, Bitcoin's not only a commodity, it's also a social network, right? When you start to understand that, you start to understand why or how Bitcoin can also be growing, not only as a financial asset like gold, but also as a social network like Facebook, right? Now, that gives one confidence. If you have Ethereum or XRP, it doesn't have that, right? What we start to understand when we will deploy, because we could put our algorithm on Ethereum and it would do like 4 or 5x what Bitcoin would do, but not safely, right? It wouldn't survive all the stress testing that we would do. The thing about Bitcoin is the ironic thing that it almost has a predictable growth. If you take away the boom and bust cycles, it is actually growing at a very, very steady rate. It's a scale invariant rate. In other words, that at every scale of it, it's increasing. But it's also diminishing returns, which we believe is one of its strengths. So this is also like a contrarian idea. People think that the adoption is going to take off and it's going to explode. Whereas our position is that the explosive growth has already happened. What's going to happen now is we're going to have diminishing bubbles, diminishing returns, but a steady rate of growth, potentially forever. As long as it exists in a fiat system, Bitcoin's value will increase over time, right? But it should increase at this power law rate for at least the next 10, perhaps 20 years. After that, who knows, right? Now, as traders, it gives us a few things. It gives us what's called like a mean, where the price is kind of oscillating around, which does give us a lot of information. Another really important thing, it gives us this power law support. Now, we don't have a chart in front of us, but the power law support, we believe, has something to do with the physics of the mining. So in other words, that if the price drops to a certain point, Bitcoin becomes unprofitable to mine. And it would actually be cheaper for the miners to buy Bitcoin instead of actually mining it. So it actually makes no sense to mine anymore, which would mean that there's incredible buying pressure at that point, which kind of makes the price stay above this level. As a trader, if you're not having to deal with a range between 0 to infinity, the power law support right now tells us it's around 35 to 38K. That really narrows our trading range, which enables us to generate really, really good returns because we're able to focus on a range. That's actually quite specific. But if I told you right now, I asked you right now, what do you think the chance that Bitcoin got to 35K today are? What would you say?
35, 1%.
Okay, correct. So everyone knows that there's a certain price with Bitcoin that it's probably not going to go back to again. If you look at that, that's where the power law support lies. So what we've done, and that was kind of the missing piece, it's actually, you would be surprised how easy it is to create a trading system that can make you money in the short term. It's not that hard. You could probably use ChatGPT. What's actually really hard is creating something that will work all the time, no matter what happens. And that's what we've been able to create here. But the missing piece was the actual DNA of Bitcoin itself. Without the DNA of Bitcoin itself, we're a little bit like we're flying without. Bitcoin gives us a clear roadmap. So to answer your question, if we put our algorithm on another asset, it's like we can only see 10 meters in front of us.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, we can see forever.
Because I'm thinking of like, I don't even know what the most highly traded asset is. Take an example of like, let's say you're trading an Apple stock. There could be, it's a small chance, but there could be some outrageous internal error, and they've been cooking the books for like decades, and a huge corruption thing comes up, and actually the price tanks so hard that the ability to repay debt disappears, and actually, the company's bankrupt and it's gone.
It's never going to go back up.
Like, it's completely gone in a matter of days. Now, that's an equity position that you might be trading specifically. I then thought about more of a commodity style, like an oil. Okay, let's take West Texas Intermediate crude oil. Like, could it completely go negative? Well, yes. Like, people have to sometimes pay to get rid of the oil that they've bought. That's the physical traders doing that, of course. The derivatives market is different. But the point being is, it's a big moment when you suddenly think, this thing is so different.
Yeah.
Like, could it actually go to zero? And now a lot of people out there will be like, it's vaporware, why are you even touching it? But that's the contrarian insight, right? Is it's actually extraordinarily valuable. And the price floor, as you've just pointed out, is much more predictable than what people realize.
That's right. That's cool. Right. And
really cool.
That's perfectly said. But, am I 100% sure? I'm probably 99%
No,
sure.
But you don't need to be as a trader, because you're taking hedged bets.
Correct. And what we have to but what we have to understand is that if there was no risk, there would be no money to be made. Zero. There would be zero, right? There has to be risk. If there's no risk, there's no opportunity, right? The opportunity is what creates the wealth. So you have to take on some element of risk. You have to make a choice.